Hello. Hello, dear friends. I'm so glad to welcome you at our live event, How to Boost Your Personal Impact in Energy Transition, organized by the New Energy Advancement Hub. My name is Tatiana Mitrova, and I'm founder and director of the New Energy Advancement Hub. And I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. Please meet remarkable Bertha Dlamini, President of African Women in Energy and Power, who is perhaps one of the brightest examples of such impact in energy transition. Bertha, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Tatiana. I'm also very excited to join you today and to share perhaps our journey in advancing just energy transition and its understanding across multiple sectors.
So, Bertha, probably some of our audience do not know your professional journey. Let's start with it. Could you please share how did you end up beautiful woman in energy transition? How did it happen? What led you to this activity?
Sure. So I have quite a different trajectory in my career in that I started in marketing communications. I am a trained marketing communications specialist, practiced for over 20 years in the area. And I founded a consulting company delivering marketing communication solutions for public sector clients and private sector clients. And it was around 2011, 2012 when I formed a partnership with an engineering consulting firm. At the time, that engineering consulting firm was the largest energy consulting firm in the Southern Hemisphere, delivering quite exciting, innovative, high impact solutions for utilities in the energy sector in Southern Africa. And that was my initial introduction to energy. And I got so excited, maybe excitement is not the right word, but absolutely fascinated by the role that energy plays in our lives that I had previously ignored. I did not really think about the construct of the energy value chain. I did not think of the solution systems products that exist or that are being procured by energy companies until I partnered with this specific company. And one of the areas that pulled my interest and pulled my heartstrings was that without universal access to energy, there can be, we will not have adequate health care, adequate sanitation, adequate education, adequate economic growth, or even decent job creation. And that for me was such a compelling reason why it was important for me to educate myself first on the construct of the energy value chains and identify how I could make a difference.
Wow, I would pick the first life hack, educate yourself first. Yeah, I think it's really very important. But then, maybe you could explain how did you grab this education? Was it executive MBA program or was it self-learning? Were it online courses or how did you get it?
So first, I must say I became very vulnerable as a professional. And what I mean by that is I allowed myself to accept and embrace that I don't know anything about energy first. And that was an emotional journey because my ego was often bruised by the number of very simple questions that I asked the engineers that I worked with, who were sophisticated engineering professionals with sterling track records in the sector. And my questions were very, very basic, and I required basic descriptions of concepts that for them had become very ordinary and very mundane. And when they explained this concept to me, I then took it upon myself to research further on the concept. So if they were speaking about SCADA, for example, I then went to research the description of the term And I went as far as reading what Wikipedia even had, and downloaded a number of local and international presentations delivered by different experts on the topic. And I did the same for all concepts in the energy space that I didn't understand. And they led me to other concepts, and that led me to other concepts. Then I also took on formal training. So I did a 5-day masterclass in energy. It was called an energy MBA by a Terrapin. It was a masterclass over 5 days where they looked at key concepts in energy and the different forms of energy. They looked at coal-fired power stations. They looked at hydro energy. They looked at all forms of renewable energy. And that gave me a foundation to research further. And the more I researched and the more I came across journals and presentations and reports, I also followed the authors of the journals on LinkedIn. And that's how I also built my network of international leaders in the energy space from different parts of the world. I read their articles, I connected with them, I followed what they were writing. And that began my self-learning journey.
Wow, fantastic. I think it's the second life hack. So just follow the leaders, identify the leaders, follow them, connect them. And tricky question. So do you think that now this learning journey is over, that you've learned everything and it's time to relax? Or do you keep learning even now after more than a decade?
Yes, I keep learning. And I always motivate, even for engineers themselves. The energy space is such an evolving landscape. We've got the energy revolution. We've got the fourth industrial revolution that has got an impact across all areas. We've got the impact of climate change. We've got the sustainable development goals and how you distill them across sectors. And you have green energy emerging and affecting all value chains. You've got electrification on the African continent that takes on a different form and a different construct from Western markets and other markets that are universally electrified. And that requires that as a professional in the field, you strive to keep ahead of the curve by continuing to study, whether it's through formal study, following thought leaders, following energy economists, participating in dialogues and discussions around concepts, gaining confidence to position your opinion, to craft your opinion on the matters, and remaining professionally and intellectually vulnerable so that you are like a sponge. You never reach a point where you know everything. You always yield to learning from others. Every week, I am connecting with new thought leaders in the energy space. So when you look at the construct of the energy value chain, you've got the fuel that feeds into energy generation technology. The fuel space is a value chain on its own. And there is emerging insights and innovation around each type of fuel and how it is being adopted into generation technology. In the generation technologies themselves, you've got an evolution of different types of implementation of the technology. Competition is giving rise to different innovation. And so if you stop learning, you will soon, within a year, find that you are left behind. In the African context, the discourse around the balance between electrifying the continent and affording dignity for communities through access to sustainable, clean, affordable energy and climate change goals and decarbonization is creating quite polarized debate that offers an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to create intellectual property, an opportunity to come up with new methodologies and new tools. So the learning doesn't stop. In fact, it is the most interesting and fascinating time of our lives today, because we are, for the first time through digitization, afforded the opportunity to access information and be part of crafting new ideas, new methodologies, new ways of thinking.
Completely agree with you. And this lifelong learning experience, it's not difficult. It's basically a lot of fun, and it's really exciting, extremely interesting, and rewarding. So, I want also to ask you, you've mentioned climate and decarbonization, which is related to energy discussion, but it's much bigger issue. So when you stepped into this area, and what was your perception? How did you look at this issue before you started it? And what is your position right now? What do you think about the climate change and the role the energy sector can play in mitigating these changes?
Absolutely. So the first thing that was quite clear for me was the lack of representation in this very technical, male-dominated field, lack of representation of women thought leaders, women professionals, women entrepreneurs, and experts across the fields that are connected, whether it is finance, or it is technology, or it is off-takers, for example. And so I set out to create a platform where we would accelerate the participation of women as professionals and service value-adding service providers across the value chains. And one of the areas that I identified as being pivotal to the acceleration of this participation was availing credible market information on the construct of the energy value chains. So when I founded African Women in Energy and Power, the first initiative was, how do we orientate women entrepreneurs to the opportunities that are hidden in value chains? And I often use this example that all of us across the globe, there's one product, and there are many products that we have in common, but one product stood out: the teaspoon. We use it every day. We have seen a teaspoon from when we could not speak. But if, as educated as we are, and as we get involved in these very complex discussions around opening value chains and making economic ecosystems inclusive, if I had to ask anyone, even professors, what is the value chain of a teaspoon? I often find that we have not thought about it. Yet the entrepreneurial opportunities that exist in that value chain are many. And when we are promoting entrepreneurship on the continent as a way to boost its economic growth, we have to start with the basic descriptions of value chains of very basic commodities and products, such as teaspoons. Now, if you take that analogy and you transpose it onto energy, a more complex area, I then had to identify experts that could unravel the energy value chains, and that could talk about the ecosystem of energy. Who are the utilities? What do they do? What do they procure? How do they empower service providers? Who are the original equipment manufacturers? How do they come into the market? How do they partner with local companies? What technologies are they advocating for? What technologies are they selling? And how can we get women entrepreneurs, youth, and persons with disabilities to understand the connection between what the OEM is selling in the energy space and why they're selling it, and what the utilities are procuring and why they are procuring it in their 3-year, 5-year strategy of modernizing their energy systems or advancing electrification. Then I had to ask the questions: who are the financiers? And what are they financing? And how are they supporting emerging entrepreneurs? So there we have dealt with access to market, access to technology, and access to finance. And this was the foundation of saying to women entrepreneurs, this is how you can participate. Now, added to that is what you have asked. There's climate change, the impact of climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals. And there is the demand by world leaders to decarbonize our economic systems. My position is as follows. Primary, we need to electrify. Primary objective and primary drive for the African continent to be a competitive global player across sectors. It needs to have sustainable supply of electricity. It needs security of supply of energy, right? That is primary for the continent. Secondary is the inclusive participation of all communities. Now, this does not mean we ignore climate change impacts, because Africa and most economies in Africa are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, even though Africa is the least contributor of carbon emissions in the world. It does not mean we need to ignore the technologies that are required to decarbonize. It means as we pursue electrification and we prioritize it, we are at the prime position to adopt technologies that enable us to curb the emissions without compromising the need to electrify, and to electrify in the capacity that allows the continent to industrialize.
That's really a complicated task, industrialization and electrification simultaneously with implementation of the latest technologies and providing economic growth and having everyone engaged. So I can imagine the scale of this challenge, but I think it's also inspiring when you are facing such tasks. But there was something interesting that you've mentioned. So when you were talking about the establishment of African women in energy and power, and the first things you've done, it looks like a research, actually, analysis of all these supply chains and identification of the major stakeholders and building the whole ecosystem with them, and then showing to the women entrepreneurs what can be done. So did I understand correctly that was the sequence of your actions in this initiative?
Sure. It was not sequenced in a linear fashion. It was very yes, it was very integrative in its in the approach, because first, as an organization, we needed to identify either grants or ways of sustaining ourselves, and we needed to do that by building a value proposition to the market so we could attract the right sponsors to support the vision that we have. And so every week I'm conducting some form of research. As a professional, as an entrepreneur, and an advocate for inclusive ecosystems, you cannot live without research. Research is your oxygen. You are constantly identifying key players, constantly building relationships based on reciprocal exchange of value. So it becomes a second nature. If you truly want to succeed, you cannot do without, and there is no shortcut. You have to do the research. So that's one. Yes, indeed. The first was to research who the experts are, who the OEMs are, and their willingness to participate in our webinars. Fortunately, they also saw that it was time to make information available, and also because I have an entrepreneurial view or an entrepreneurial perspective into the advocacy. I knew that utilities would want to listen to OEMs because it helps them with their strategies for the advancement of their utilities and their systems. I knew that OEMs who would like to participate in an environment where there are utilities because these are their prime customers. In the middle are financiers who finance both parties. And added to that, if you look at it from a cube perspective, there are the entrepreneurs who are looking to access market from all the parties. And so we created this value-centered platform where each participant walks away having gained something.
So basically, you've established a platform for the dialogue of all the stakeholders involved, and each of them found some value in participation. Wow, that sounds great. I'm listening to you and thinking that in theory, we all understand that there is urgent need for economic development in Africa, for climate action, for reducing emissions, for accelerating energy transition. But most of the people I'm talking to, my acquaintances, students, colleagues, they are like in this helpless position that, okay, what can we do? There are governments, they are not doing their jobs properly. So yeah, where this world is moving to the climate catastrophe, but what can I do as a single person without billions or without, millions of followers and so on? I don't accept this position because I think that all voices matter and each of us can make difference. And you are demonstrating that actually it's absolutely doable. How long did it take you to establish this initiative?
So the conceptualization took place around 2018. Before that, I had already initiated a Youth in Energy program. And what I had identified is when I joined the energy consulting firm and I started representing them at platforms, especially international energy events, you would not see women participants or Black African participants on the exhibition floor and sometimes in some of the panel discussions. And so when I was invited to sit on the advisory boards where we directed the content of the conference, it was a prime opportunity for me to learn about the construct of the ecosystem, but also to influence how we enable youth to participate in such international platforms. What happened is when young graduates, either at an honors level or master's level and even PhDs, submitted their papers to motivate to be included in the mainstream of the conference, their papers were rejected on the basis that their concepts had not been commercialized. So they did not have proof of concept. So they could not stand as experts to address other experts in the industry, which was a fair reason. However, I said at the time to the conference organizers, give me the papers that you have rejected and afford me the opportunity to create a theater on the exhibition floor of your event where these rejected papers will be able to present. And so we started raising sponsorship to fund the travel of young students and young professionals who had written their master's papers or their honors papers to come and showcase abstracts of their academic papers at the theater. In that way, they got to meet potential employers, potential financiers for their research or for their entrepreneurial desires. And they got to network with an international audience, so they were not totally excluded. At the back of that youth program, I realized that there was a gap for women in particular. So the conceptualization of AWEaP was quite quick because I had spent from 2014 to 2018 delivering this youth program at international events. And we touched about 60 youngsters. 2 of them had traveled to the European Utility Week to meet 100 other European youngsters debating energy matters. And others have gone on to do exceptionally well in the market. And so we launched African Women in Energy and Power in March of 2019. And when we launched, I had already done research to advocate for endorsement for the vision from other organizations that were well established. And fortunately, they saw the reason to have a dedicated initiative, program, and organization looking at the methodology that we were following. And first we said, we will unravel the market construct. We will pool all agents of the ecosystem in energy to come and share insights into their role and how and where entrepreneurial opportunities were. And truly, I used the example of the value chain of a teaspoon. And it literally touched a lot of people's hearts because they realized that at home, they don't have value chain discussions with their children, with their partners, with their friends, with their colleagues. Yet, the products that we use every day, even you and I sitting where we are sitting, whatever you touch, from the desk to the laptop, to the microphones, to everything that we use, and to the clothes we are wearing, it is a value chain with entrepreneurial opportunities. But our academic curricula are not constructed or designed to focus on value chains of productive sectors that drive a domestic economy. And so you come out as a graduate, but you don't know where and how to go and enterprise if you were to choose to be an entrepreneur. And so most important for the African continent, where at least 60% of the population is the youth, and a majority of them are unemployed without access to the tools and resources to enterprise. Value chain discussions across all productive sectors are critical so that they can organize themselves to gain the targeted skills that are required for them to be value-adding service providers. I only chose energy because women bear the brunt of energy poverty from a safety perspective, from a health perspective, physical safety, health safety, loss of productive time, and their inclusion in economy. And you will see in communities where electricity is introduced, the first people to be micro enterprises are women. And in fact, women on the continent are leading in entrepreneurship. 58% of the population of the continent is involved in self-employment, and that 58% is women. And globally, African women lead the statistics in terms of their fearlessness to pursue entrepreneurship, right? So support, there was a compelling, and this is from research, these stats that I'm quoting is research-based. It's data that has been researched by the likes of Harvard Business Schools and other researchers across the world. So, and so it was quite clear for me that the starting point has to be information on the construct of value chains, information on the procurement processes of utilities who are largely the owners of the market, information on how to become a channel partner to an original equipment manufacturers, most of whom are multinationals that have got a budget to train their channel partners, that have got a desire to build foot soldiers into the African market because it is ripe with opportunities. And the question was, how do we ensure that women have organized themselves in terms of having the right documentation, registering the right companies, the right compliance, the right governance structures, as prescribed by utilities, large power users, independent power producers, and original equipment manufacturers. With this compliance, it is easier for these parties to invite them to become enterprise development beneficiaries and for them to bid in partnership with OEMs for the opportunities that are opening up as utilities procure product, services, solutions, and systems to to advance their systems.
Wow, that sounds like absolutely fantastic, a really fascinating initiative. And I mean, first I was listening to your story about the youth in energy. It's an eye opener. It's really so important. And I would completely agree. Let's put it as life hack number 4 or 5, that bringing people together, making them communicating with each other, it is already creating a lot of value these days. But helping the youth, it's probably like another stage of this impact, because you're really creating the future and you're providing such incredibly precious opportunities for these youngsters that this is really absolutely outstanding. With your initiative for the women, it's also, I mean, I really like this entrepreneurial spirit, because in many cases, I mean, I've been engaged in quite many women in energy initiatives, and sometimes I see that it's becoming like a gathering of those who are complaining. Yeah, I'm discriminated, my salary is lower, help me. Yeah, and this victim position, it actually doesn't help. What is really working when you take the initiative, when you take the lead, and what you've done with this initiative and providing these women with the real intellectual, legal, entrepreneurial support, yeah, is just to give them the vehicle how to earn money, how to improve their financial state and their influence and their economic performance. So my applause, that's really, really great. But, at the same time, listening to you, I was thinking, oh my God, so how many failures, how many approaches to the sponsors and large companies without any success, and how many refusals you've had to face in order to get all this stuff done. So it sounds like an easy journey, but I know it wasn't. You should have a lot of confidence that what you are doing is really important, and if you face any criticism or skepticism, it's your problem, guys. I'm doing what I believe is important to do. So how difficult was it to raise the money for this whole initiative and to put it all together?
It remains difficult to this day. It was extremely difficult to convince sponsors, and I think what we take for granted is when you are married to your vision, and you are almost fanatical about it, it becomes heartbreaking when others don't see. And it becomes heartbreaking because often we forget that people want to see, not only hear. And when you're talking about your vision, people are hearing, because you don't have a track record to show them that this is what you have done and this is the impact it has had. So for the first year, we didn't have a sponsor. I think we had a sponsor for like $500 or something ridiculous like that, something that low, but we gave them value. And this is the crux of the matter. Every sponsor matters, however small, however large. It is your responsibility as a recipient to consistently deliver value against every resource that is entrusted to you. So a lot of it was funded from my personal resources. A lot of it was funded from my savings. A lot of it was funded from the sacrifices I made from the consulting fees that I was generating in other areas. Because as an individual, I truly believed in this vision. And I started building a track record, and people started noticing. Now I started creating what they see. They heard, they had my spirit, but now they were seeing activity in the market. They were seeing credibility in the narrative. They were seeing credibility in the research that came through the presentations that we gave. Another area that is important is relationships. You work with relationships. You can never underestimate the necessity to have the skill to build enduring professional relationships that are grounded in value exchange. So even if I know you, Tatiana, and tomorrow you are in one of the largest OEMs, simply because I know you is not enough. I have to say, Tatiana, this is the value I can deliver for you. I have identified that in your strategy, you want to deliver X, Y, Z. This is how we can amplify what you want to deliver. And so that exchange, you then say, great, Bertha, if you can amplify it and enable us to reach this demographic in the market so that we can build channel partners, so that we have entrepreneurs to train, so that we can have a platform to showcase our brand and what our organization is doing, so that we have a platform to showcase the technology that we want electricity utilities to procure and how we support them. We will sponsor for this value. And it wasn't until the end of the second year that we got, number one, a grant that enabled us to deliver our webinars consistently. We supplemented that with corporate sponsorship that enabled us to deliver even more webinars and in a more structured sequence that gave us sustainability and visibility in the global market. Our webinars have reached over 50 countries, and we've showcased over 30 markets on the continent, electricity markets. And then out of that, we started applying for projects. So for example, just energy transition is a topic that requires orientation and education at different levels of society. We delivered a pilot in partnership with Deloitte and the Southern African power programs by the USAID. We trained 32 women officials on the just energy transition, the policy environment in South Africa, the value chains that will be affected, and how transitioning to green energy will affect grid stability, and as officials within utilities, what they need to know to maintain grid stability. And so that project in itself brought in revenue that enabled us to sustain quite a number of operational elements. And so we continue to do more than just the information sessions. We do channel partnering. We do the Just Energy Transition Program is now in demand. We're partnering with a number of academic institutions. We're targeting more markets. We've got more proposals that are going out. Funders have seen our credibility in the quality of work that we deliver, even as a nonprofit company. And it is my philosophy that the nature of the organization you are has got nothing to do with the competence with which you must deliver your services to your stakeholders. And so we strive to recruit the best consultants. Our advisory board is made out of exceptional individuals and professionals that we can pull on for guidance. And I know that as much as I am a founder, and as much as the vision is mine, I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little. I rely on the advice I get from the advisory board. So I retain my vulnerability to say, I'm excited about this. I think it's going to work, but give me a different opposing perspective so that I can bring sanity in my planning and in my thinking. And that is very critical for entrepreneurs and professionals. And I don't always succeed. Sometimes I'm stubborn. And because I'm stubborn, even when it's difficult, and people were saying, but you know, in the private sector, you could be pulling huge salaries for the competence that you have and the education that you have and the global profile that you have built. I believe that I am doing something that is required not only on the continent, but globally. And with time, I will pool the right partners for us to be truly self-sustaining by delivering high impact programs that advances climate adaptation solutions across cooking. You know, this stat is really scary. 900 million people on the African continent do not have access to clean cooking energy. And if we were to reach the 2030 target, we would need to shift 130 million people a year to clean cooking solutions. Imagine 130 million cooking solutions. That is an entrepreneurial opportunity that is difficult to just even grasp. And we're saying climate adaptation solutions will bring prosperity to African women, youth, and persons with disability. And to be able to do this, we need organizations such as ourselves that are a bridge between the technology providers, the financiers, and the entrepreneurs that need to learn how to use the technology or need the support to innovate technology that is contextually relevant for the domestic markets. We need organizations with this kind of commitment, because in between, there are funders that are looking for organizations like ourselves to deliver these programs. And there are entrepreneurs that will be able to deliver the 130 million cooking solutions. But we need a network of reliable organizations led by credible individuals with integrity that will do right by the funders' resources. And I think I've said more than the question you asked.
But I mean, each word is precious. I will listen again and take notes, because I really, really appreciate what you are saying and completely agree with each and every word. With this thesis is to remain always open-minded to the new ideas and understanding how limited our knowledge is. This idea that actually we need to build networks and we need to engage people, because otherwise alone we cannot change a lot. But if we get people on board, the synergy is absolutely skyrocketing. But I have a question here. So how did you get those people engaged? How did you reach out to these female entrepreneurs? How did you approach the companies? How did you approach the funds? So was it personal relationship, personal introductions, or did you connect via internet? Or how did you organize these communication channels?
Sure. So first off, I was quite blessed because my marketing communication training came into play, right? And also the consulting company that I founded as for marketing communications really gave me the practice to break through industries that are foreign to me. So I could leverage that knowledge. That's number one. Number two is we underestimate the power of LinkedIn. Every research that I have conducted and every journal that I have conducted was written by someone who is on LinkedIn. And I reached out to them, introduced myself, and others reached out to me. We found value. They discovered the breadth of my vision and decided to invest in it. They told their network, introduced me to their network. Their network chose to invest in it. And so that is how I found some of the partners, and some of the partners found me. Entrepreneurs. I then went back to some of the women that I had met through the events that I attended in the energy space. And I approached them to become country chairpersons to volunteer their credible profile as individual entrepreneurs and professionals to become a country chairperson for AWEaP. And we minimize the administrative burden on their side, and we only call upon them when we have raised sponsorship for them to invest time so that we can remunerate them. And through this network of country chairpersons, they brought their network because they are just as equally committed to gender mainstreaming, to building inclusive ecosystems. And so AWEaP gave them a platform to also amplify what they were doing in their domestic market. And so when we want now to profile an entrepreneur in Nigeria, we have a country chairperson in Nigeria who plays a pivotal role in the Nigerian energy market, and she recommends leading women that participate on our platform. And so for the 22 chapters that we now have on the continent, we've got individual country chairpersons that are recommending entrepreneurs that come and participate. We were very fortunate that the Southern African Power Pool saw the vision when we were doing our youth in energy program, that they endorsed both entities. And so now we've got an endorsement from the Southern African Power Pool, which pools 17 electricity utilities in Southern Africa. Last month, we got an endorsement from the East African Power Pool, which pools another 17 electricity utilities in that region. And for the first time in our webinar last month, we had Libya and Sudan represented by women. During these very difficult high conflict times, we had women engineers from Libya and from Sudan who presented on their electricity utility and what they are doing to advance women. We have an association with women in Ethiopia, another organization. We have an association with women in Ghana. And so through these collaborative networks, we have an association with the Gracia Machel Trust that brings another 200,000 network of women on the continent around energy, finance, media, and agriculture. And we position ourselves as an organization as a non-competitive entity. We do not compete with other organizations. We collaborate with organizations because to advance an inclusive energy ecosystem on the continent requires more than one organization. It requires all 55 countries, I beg your pardon, represented by multiple organizations within their domestic markets, singing the same voice, implementing different strategies that are relevant for the domestic market.
I think it's extremely important what you've said about competitive environment and competing organizations actually cooperating. So this is probably the biggest difference with the way how the things were usually done in a traditional way. And this is opening completely new perspectives for the community building, which you are actually now executing, right? And yeah, my congratulations with this scheme of women engagement, yeah, taking them on board in your organization and finding it mutually beneficial both for you and for their countries, for their organizations. This is really, it looks so great. I can see in the chat that people are writing, what a vision, bravo Bertha, the world needs to hear this, amazing, critical for the energy revolution. I just want to transfer these words to you because I cannot say better. It's really such an inspiring journey, but Bertha, what's next? What are your plans? Can you show us?
Yes. So what you said something that is quite important, that when we gather as women in energy or as women professionals in women initiatives, often we are talking to ourselves. We are talking to ourselves about our problems. And there is no change when we are talking to ourselves. So one of the areas that we want to partner with interested organizations to advance is allyship, is building and working with men who are advocates for inclusive economies and inclusive ecosystems, because they sit in spaces where policy is driven, crafted, and implemented and led. And therein is where the influence needs to be driven, where the change needs to happen. And so that's the next level, that we do not organize events, call it Women in Energy, and not have leading men in energy in those events, listening to the challenges we are having and being open to give testimonies on the behaviors of men in working environments that are detrimental to the advancement of inclusivity and diversity. So we need a collaboration, a strong collaboration with men across all sectors to sing from the same hymn sheet, that to advance global prosperity, African prosperity, we need to work hand in glove to break the barriers that decelerate inclusivity. So that's number one. Number two, our next phase for us is B2B missions. We launched our B2B mission in Turkey at the end of August, where we took 27 women entrepreneurs from 7 countries on the continent. They went to an energy conference in Istanbul, where they met with original equipment manufacturers who are willing to partner with them to advance technology in their domestic markets. We want to do this across the world. We want to take women from all 54 countries, women entrepreneurs. So these are individuals that already have a track record as entrepreneurs. And they have skin in the game because they pay for their flight tickets. And we raise sponsorship for their accommodation and for their care when they're in the foreign country, and of course the participation in the event. We want to work with embassies because we believe that when people understand the constructs of technologies, they are also able to innovate and build intellectual property in their domestic markets. And this for us is very, very important. So B2B missions is next. Post-COVID, we are now in a hybrid environment where we're having webinars, but face-to-face engagements are important. They strengthen relationships. And so we want to have events where men and women discuss how we can enable women in Africa to participate in large-scale energy infrastructure projects. As the continent pursues the single trading market, the single electricity trading market, you know, a master plan has been released to connect all 55 countries into a single electricity grid. This is the time that young people, persons with disability, and women understand how these large infrastructure projects are going to be delivered and identify entry points that are suitable for them in their different markets, and we build support for them. So this for us, these events are not just events for us to visit other countries for the sake of tourism and to name that, oh, I have been to Russia, I've been to Brazil, I've been to India, I've been to China, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Germany, etc. No, this is to change the narrative, change the philosophy of trading between the West and Africa, where technology companies will commit to building the capacity of local SMMEs so that the market that is opening can be shared and be taken up by local SMMEs as much as we need large players from other countries. In this way, Africa will truly become a global player with the labor capacity to participate in energy revolution, in the industrial revolutions that are coming, and we will change the narrative that Africa is behind. It starts with creating inclusivity today. And this is the philosophy that drives my passion and my vision.
Bertha, bravo. I mean, I was listening to you and thinking, this woman is changing the whole continent. That sounds unbelievable, but that's what we see. It's really the power of passion, the power of vision, the power of dialogue and engagement and cooperation. It's something new and gives hope for the whole humankind. Yeah, in these turbulent times when we do not know where this world is moving, but actually, as long as there are people like you, I still keep hopes. So, Bertha, we are approaching to the end of the hour of our hourly conversation. I'm just looking at the clocks and thinking, oh, I thought we are talking just for 10 minutes, but it's already the end. It was so interesting and so inspiring. So just to sum up, maybe like a very brief message to our audience. What do you think at the end of the day is the most important thing to build your impact in the energy transition?
The most important thing I say, especially to women, remember that you are enough. There's only one of you. You are a unique entity, and you must have the confidence to pursue your dreams and to know that your presence adds value, and it will add value when you determine what value to add. So that is important. You are enough. Determine in your head and in your heart what value you want to add using your talents, your unique contributions. That's number one. Number two, let's continue to educate people about the constructs of value chains. The value chain in solar energy, in nuclear energy, in hydro energy, in wind energy, in energy storage, in electric vehicles, and all other emerging technologies. Let's continue to make those messages palatable. Let's translate it into information that is easy to understand by all. That's my contribution.
Oh, thank you, Bertha. I cannot even express all my gratitude. And I really hope that there is a very long road ahead for our cooperation with the New Energy Advancement Hub. I am sure that together we can do much more. Once again, thank you for sharing all your insights, your inspiration, and your passion. Yeah, and we will keep in touch. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. And I look forward to many more and working with you.
Indeed. Thank you and goodbye. Stay with us.
Bye. Thank you.